As we approach closer to the new year, I always take time to reflect on how my business has evolved up until this point. I like to look at what changes I have made, what I have learned, and breakthroughs that I've had in my reselling journey. During this reflection, I gathered 5 breakthroughs that I have had that I really wish someone would have shared with me at the beginning of my reselling journey. Today, I'm going to share 5 reseller truths that you need to hear. All of these tips, strategies, and things we're going to talk about today have been a tremendous breakthrough in my business. And I'm hoping that I can share those breakthroughs with you and make a difference in your reselling business. I hope that by sharing some of these, I can help you to sidestep some of the mistakes that I've made and move forward in your businesses a lot sooner than I was able to. A reseller truth number 1 is that you don't need a fancy setup, you need a system. When I first started reselling, I tried pretty much every single system, setup, everything you could possibly imagine. I have gone from having ring lights, umbrella lights. At one point, I even tried doing an inverted flat lay situation. I've tried so many different equipment. I've had multiple backgrounds. For those of you that have been here for several years with me now, since the beginning of YouTube, you'll remember the white fur rug that I used to have. Many, many years later, I have now stripped all of that stuff away. I've gotten rid of all of it, and I've gone back to a bare bones setup. And I keep thinking to myself, my gosh, if I could have recognized in the beginning that I didn't need all of those fancy equipment, all of those fancy tools, all of those different backgrounds, I would have saved myself so much money. I really invested into a lot of things that I didn't really need. Not only that, but it would have saved me so much frustration because I get inspired really easily. So when I was watching other resellers on YouTube towards the beginning of my career, a new idea would spark every time I would watch a video, and then I would run to get the exact setup they had, not really thinking about what I needed for me and my business, what was most efficient, and what was going to work. I would get frustrated because I would spend all this time and money creating a setup that I thought I would be happy with, only to realize that I was going to change it up a couple of months later. Currently today, we use 0 lighting when we take photos. We just have things on a blank painted white wall, not super fancy at all. We took away most of our packaging. It gets chucked into a poly mailer, it gets sent to the buyer. There are many other things where I took out frills out of my business. At first, I was really worried that it was going to upset my customers because they weren't going to have the same level of frills that they were used to having. But actually what ended up happening is my customers did not complain at all. I've not gotten one single complaint. My process got so much simpler and easier because I didn't have all this equipment around me and all of these things as steps in my process that I had to use. And my sales actually increased because I was getting more done. So you don't need a fancy setup. You just need a system that is streamlined, it is simple, it is easy for you to do often without tons of equipment and steps in the way in order for you to meet your goals. When it comes to reselling, it should be as simple as you source an item, you photograph it, you list it, and then you sell it and you ship it. All the other little things in between really can add to taking so much more time than is necessary to get the job done. And so if you're currently in this process where you're constantly changing up your setup, try to divert your attention not to your setup, but to your system. What are you really accomplishing by using all of these things? If using those things doesn't actually accomplish the very basics of reselling, then you can probably eliminate those in your business. Reseller truth number 2. This one is near and dear to my heart. If you are followers of my channel, you will know that I have really learned to love the numbers, and I think that you should too. Learn to embrace numbers in your business. Learn to love the math. You do not need to be a math genius to figure out the numbers that you need in your business in order to meet your goals. Learn where you should tweak things and also where you should cut things out. Everything in reselling, and I mean everything, can be solved with simple math. If you want to increase your average sale price, you can do that with math. If you want to decrease your cost of goods, you can do that with math. If you want to figure out how to cut 1 minute off of listing per item, you can do that with math. Tracking all of your numbers, whether it is time, sales, the amount of items you're picking up, whatever it may be, if you're tracking them, they are much more easy to manage and tweak when you need to. Don't be afraid to get in there and figure out what is going on. And tip number 2 actually leads me into tip number 3, which is that you are never going to reach your monetary goals if you are not listing the same amount. Let me explain. So if you're hoping to sell 10 a day, if you're not actually listing 10 a day, you're not going to meet that goal. One that I think flies under the radar and where a lot of resellers get very frustrated and hung up is not only the amount you're listing, but the dollar amount that you are listing. Let's embrace the numbers from tip number 2 and let's roll this in to tip number 3 and let's actually look at what it takes to meet a certain goal criteria. This is a spreadsheet I created for the profit breakdown that helps me understand my numbers and set some goals. This is a quick breakdown of what fees might look like on eBay. You would have to adjust for any extra fees, but this is a decent estimation of what an eBay fee might look like for the regular reseller. So let's say that your average cost of goods is $5 and your average sale price is $25. This is going to net you around $16.61 per item. You can play around with the numbers here, but similarly, about the same net profit happens for, let's say you go to the bins and you're flipping $1 into 20. And let's just say that this first line here are your average numbers. Then you're going to take your net goal per month, meaning what you actually want to take in after fees and your cost of goods. This would be before taxes or any office expenses. So let's say that your net goal per month is to make $2,000. In order to figure out how much that needs to be per week, we can divide that by 4. And then how many per day, we can take the week and divide it by 7. In order for me to make my net profit per month of $2,000, that means I would need to make a net profit per day of around $71 on average. So from here, you can ask yourself, am I actually making that? And if I am not, is that because what I am listing and how many I am listing is not enough? In this scenario, are we listing enough? What we can do is take the per day net that you need to meet in order to achieve your goals and divide that by your actual average net. And that is going to give us how many items we actually need to list at the bare minimum in order to meet our goals. So in this case, we would need to list about 4 to 5 listings per day in order to potentially achieve, and that's with every single item selling that you list, meet our net goal per month. Let's say this is your setup and these are your numbers. I would ask myself, am I actually listing 4 to 5 per day? If the answer is no, then I need to maybe increase my listings in order to potentially achieve my goal. Now, we all know that for most of us, if we list items, it's probably not all going to sell. So maybe we want to double or even triple this number to ensure that we are going to meet our goals. But at the bare minimum, we cannot have this goal but not be meeting our listing goal or our average sale price. And one thing that I absolutely love about reselling is that you can change any dial. So let's say that this is my number and I actually, no matter what I do, can only list 2 per day. How do we get that number to 2? Are there some other dials that we could potentially change? So could we change maybe our cost of goods? Could we maybe increase our average sale price? And you can see this number starts to go down. You can see how if we're not even doing the bare minimum of what it would take in order to achieve those goals per our numbers, we might be getting frustrated when we're not meeting those goals every single month. Take a look at your own numbers and make sure you're at least doing the bare minimum, not only in terms of how many you want to sell per day, but also monetarily, how much is realistic given your average net profit. Reseller truth number 4 is that by doing extensive research before you go sourcing, you can actually cut your sourcing time in half. You guys know I am a big believer in checking comps when you're at the thrift store and really making sure that the data is there to pick up an item, that there's desirability, that it makes sense for your cost of goods and the potential price that you might sell it at in order to pick up an item. Those decisions, I think, sometimes can only be made while you are at the thrift store sourcing and have the item in hand. However, in addition to that, if you do some research in certain categories that you frequently source, just even 10 minutes before you go sourcing, I really believe you can cut your sourcing time in half. Because let's say that you look up men's button-up shirts. You want to figure out through research what the best men's button-up shirts are and the ones you should leave behind. In most categories, especially in men's button-down shirts, there's probably only 20 or less things that you're gonna want to look for that sell really quickly and for high enough average sale prices that are worth your time. So if you can figure out what those 20 items are for that specific category, you can have tunnel vision, have a really narrow focus, and only look for those 20 items. Trying to memorize 20 items is a lot easier than trying to memorize all of the brands out there and whether you should pick them up or whether you shouldn't pick them up. If you do your research beforehand, like I said, you can get that tunnel vision, only look for those things and know to, in general, leave the rest behind. And doing that can cut your sourcing time in half. Imagine if you spent 10 minutes before every sourcing trip looking up a different category. By the end of the month, you'll have covered all of the categories that you sell in. Reseller truth number 5. This is one that is so prevalent in the reselling community, and that is whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you are right. Mindset is everything when it comes to being an entrepreneur, owning a business, even a side hustle. Your mindset on whether you can or cannot achieve something is going to either limit you or catapult you to the next level. There are a ton of people in the reselling community who do nothing but tell me that they can't, even though there are people doing it every single day. And if somebody else can do it, so can you. We have got to get out of this mindset where we think that just because things are difficult or because they might take a tremendous amount of time to achieve, that does not mean that we shouldn't attempt to achieve it. In my personal opinion, mindset is the make it or break it for resellers. If you can't find that drive, if you can't find that determination to press forward, and if you believe things are impossible, you will never reach the next levels of reselling. So, have some faith in yourself, try it out, and believe that you can. All right, you guys, that is it for the 5 reseller truths that you need to hear. This has been a popular series on my channel, and I do have more reseller truths. If you would like to hear them, drop a comment down below and let me know that you would like me to continue this series. Are there reselling truths that you think the reselling community needs to know? Also put those in the comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.